At one of my jobs, we had a meeting that all the personnel who were at the same level that I was met. I think it was actually the Christmas party. So we were all together in one location, even though our jobs were in different locations throughout the community. We had some announcements and that kind of thing, and then they wanted us to go around and the new people would introduce ourselves, and I was still one of the new people at that time. So when it came my turn to speak, I attempted to, and no one could hear. I couldn't make enough sound, and I was so short of breath because the what I thought was laryngitis was so severe. So my supervisor, who happened to be sitting right next to me, a wonderful woman named Amber,
I spoke for him. I introduced him to everyone there, told them who he was, where he worked, and I'm sure he was grateful, but at the same time I could tell he was a little sad. And I was sad for him because I know cancer is a monster.
She told whatever it was that needed to be told for my sake and saved me from the embarrassment of that. But that's how bad it was. I began to lose my voice, and this was right at the around New Year's. It was a snowy, cold winter, and people had colds and flu, and I also didn't get too concerned about that because a lot of people were out from work, and I was working two jobs. People were sick in both job places, and so I thought, well, I'm just getting some kind of laryngitis or flu, but as is my way, I just sort of ignored it and knew I had the appointments coming up with the docs, so I just would wait until I saw them. It got pretty serious. I really had trouble talking, and when the phone rang, sometimes people couldn't really tell what I was trying to say, so that let me know that it was actually pretty serious. When I finally had my appointments and saw the ear, nose, throat doctor, who at this point in time was new to me because the man I had had before had moved to a different hospital in a different location. Dr. Lansford, who had done the surgery, had part of the surgery. So I met a new doctor, and he did a scope to see what was wrong. I explained about the tightness and the loss of voice, and once again I wanted to watch. So when he got the scope down in there, this remarkable little camera, he said, "No, there's something else going on here. This is not just a bug that's going around. Half of your voice box is not moving, the left side of it, the larynx." And so he had me, while watching the screen, I would cough for him and say words for him and watch, and only one side of the voice box was flapping against the other, and because the stationary side was in its pulled away position, I was having quite a bit of trouble getting any volume, and it took a lot of air for me to speak. So he said it's time for an endoscopy to see what's going on down here. Before an endoscopy, I had a CT scan. So the ear, nose, throat doctor scheduled a CT scan so we could see what was going on. And that was on a Friday afternoon, I recall, because people were getting ready to go away for the weekend, and I was the last one in there, and you know, I had enough different procedures that I wasn't too upset about it. It took some time and was not real comfortable, but that was fine. Then I went home, and I was scheduled to work again the next day, and so I had just dinner at home kind of plan going on, watch a movie, that kind of thing. And that night, it must have been around 8 o'clock, I think, maybe a little earlier, the phone rang, and it was the radiation oncologist whom I had worked with before with the oral cancer 3.5 years before. And he said, "Stan, I need to talk to you. I have what is some very bad news." And I said, "Why, what's up?" And he said, "Well, I had just taken a quick look at the results of your scan this afternoon." He said, it was fortunate I saw it because I am preparing to leave for 2 weeks on vacation out of the country. And one of the nurses made me aware of this, so I decided to call you. This shows in your esophagus, pretty much in the center of your esophagus, a tumor. And he said it looks very advanced, and the glands on the outside of the esophagus are very enlarged, and they are wrapped around the nerves which go up to the larynx. And he said, "I suspect this is why you're having vocal problems and swallowing problems." There's a whole picture together. He said, "Whatever it is very bad news." I said, "Well, is it cancer?" And he said, "Well, I'm sure it is, although I cannot say that without a biopsy. But it's very advanced, and it is important that as soon as you can, you get in to see a medical oncologist and let him do whatever testing he wants, because this is something we're going to have to get onto right away." Needless to say, I wasn't expecting that. I continued to get my supper ready, and then the phone rang again, and it was the nurse there in the radiation department, and she was still there, and she's actually someone I've known for a long time. I knew her when she was in high school. And she talked with me about what the doctor had seen, and she said that she took the liberty of going ahead and scheduling me to see a medical oncologist because there were not many appointments available, and she knew I needed to get in there as quickly as possible. She went ahead and chose the oncologist for me, and I'm very glad she did. He was fine, and she knew those doctors, and I have no problems with that. And consequently, on early Wednesday morning, I was able to get in. He ordered an endoscopy, which I then had. And once again, I wanted to watch the whole thing, and it was fascinating. But I could see, as soon as he got into the esophagus, even though I had never seen the inside of an esophagus, I could see the tumor right away. It didn't belong there. And it looked kind of like, I remember as a kid we visited some caves and there were stalactites and stalagmites, and it looked like a stalagmite coming up from the wall of the esophagus, and the coloring was not healthy looking. The rest of the esophagus was a nice pink looking organ-like color. And so of course the doctor took biopsies. This is a intestinal guy that was in the digestion part of the clinic, who was doing this, and took me out, and I went home, and then, I think it was 5 days, maybe, or 4, I had to go back in and see the medical oncologist again, and he had the results, and it was in fact cancerous, and he gave me the diagnosis of stage 3 esophageal cancer. He also, as the radiation oncologist had said, emphasized that this was an advanced cancer. It was very bad news, and he said it was not related to the oral cancer from before, that the head and neck and mouth all looked great, but this was a new unrelated problem. So there were, of course, lots of questions. I had a friend of mine with me, because I think it's good to take someone with you. Two people hear the same thing differently, and so we were able to talk about it afterwards. And after that, the doctor had one of the cancer social workers meet with me so we could talk about it. And she said that with this particular diagnosis, I should probably not have too much trouble getting disability benefits. The doctor had said that I had to quit both of my jobs right away, and that it was most likely going to be a more difficult time for me physically and emotionally than the oral cancer had been 3.5 years before. He said I would probably have to have a feeding tube, and I would indeed need radiation again, and I would need chemotherapy. And then we ended up talking about a possible clinical trial that I could qualify for. So we ended up wasting a couple weeks looking into this clinical trial and trying to get me to fit the profile. And of course, no one intended to waste time, but it just turned out not to be right for me. The reason I wanted to be involved was that through being in the clinical trial, I would have had treatment with a drug known as Erbitux, which had I tried to pay for it myself, would have been $6,000 for every treatment, and it would have been a treatment every week. Well, because I had to quit both jobs, I had no insurance. All of a sudden, I was back in the boat that I had been in so much of my life. So I thought that the finances would be much easier if I did qualify for the clinical trial. So I met with the researchers and filled out questionnaires and had educational seminars with the researchers about how the trial works and what was involved, etc. Well, after a few weeks, my radiation oncologist, Dr. Sapiente, returned from his vacation. And finally, on a Friday afternoon, once again, I got a call from him at about 5 p.m. And he said, "Hi, Stan, this is Dr. Sapiente, and I have been working on your physics," is what he called it, for the radiation for your upcoming treatment. And it turns out that you are not going to be able to be in the trial, because if you have the radiation according to the protocol of the trial, you would end up going into the field that we covered before with your oral cancer. 30% of that field would be hit with radiation again, and that cannot be done. You simply can't endure that. Thanks to tomotherapy, which is a new kind of radiation which wasn't available 4 years earlier, he could, what he said was, sculpt his way under that field and hit the tumor in the esophagus with this new technology. And the good news is we could start right away, since we weren't waiting for the rest of the protocol for the trial. And he said, frankly, he was a little bit relieved that we wouldn't be bothered and restricted like the trial would have restricted us. So I said, yeah, let's go. And so we started treatment that Monday morning.